looking at my dot now.
And I'm looking at my dot too. So welcome to Heller Baarns. And we are excited to have Mr. Steve Smith with us today, talking about some really cool projects. I love his backstory. And Johnny, I know you've known, like Steve and I met this morning during our sound check. And so we go back way, way, way back. But I think you two have worked together before. Johnny, can you tell us a little bit about our guest today?
Yes, Steve Smith is the head honcho at OASIS Audiobooks, which is out in Carroll Stream, Illinois, not far from where I grew up, as a matter of fact. And I don't, as usual with our guests, I don't remember exactly. I think I met Steve at a, what was it? The book expo. What were those? The book things in New York City?
Yeah, they used to be Book Expo. It
Yeah,
was,
so
the trade show for the book industry. And we often had our audio publisher meetings and things like that coincide with the.
yeah, that's where
the
APAC
first
coincided.
event.
Yeah. So I think I met you one year at one of those because I'd gone to the book expo with the idea of meeting audiobook publishers.
Yeah,
And I went up to you and Lisa Smith, who is not related, but is your
correct.
in your business with you, and that's how I met you two guys. And I think we became pretty friendly pretty fast. Although I will say this about Steve Smith, you can't tell sometimes. He's really got a straight face, and you can't tell. He reminds me of Paul Gagne a little bit. You don't know how funny he really is because you can't tell he's joking half the time.
Looks aren't everything, though, so.
So I've done a number of series for you, which are quite wonderful. I've done the Flash Gordon series with you guys,
Right.
and I've done a whole bunch of the Edgar Rice Burroughs adventure type things,
Right.
in Earth, which are just so wonderful sci-fi and kind of early. I call it early lit RPG. Lit RPGs taking the world by storm. The kind of books we're talking about are the earliest days of lit RPG, the Jules Verne type things.
Absolutely. Well, I have a personal interest in pulp writers, H.P. Lovecraft, people like that. But my roots go back to Jules Verne and Edgar Rice Burroughs. We did a really beautiful deal at the end of 2019. Where we secured the full Edgar Rice Burroughs library for audio. And we've done a number of those titles in audio up till now. We're four shy of completing the Tarzan saga. The problem is a lot of the Edgar Rice Burroughs titles are public domain, so other people jump in and, you can find, literally hundreds of versions of the first Tarzan book. And so we're doing them in conjunction with the estate. So we're going into, volumes that have really important literary introductions by famous writers. Ray Bradbury once had said that he felt Edgar Rice Burroughs was the most important author of the 20th century, and, attributed, and this is something that's factual, I think it was Franklin Roosevelt attributed our success in World War II to Edgar Rice Burroughs teaching young men heroism through Tarzan, the John Carter books, things like that. Yeah. And then the early NASA scientists attributed their desire to get into space to Burroughs' John Carter of Mars series.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I think there's a lot of truth to that, but I love to be able to do old titles like that. And, because of him, we explored others, in fact, others, Johnny, that you did for us by a guy named A. Merritt.
Yes.
And who was an editor of some very famous pulps as well as a writer. And a guy named Otis Adalbert Klein, who was sort of an Edgar Rice Burroughs copycat. He did his own Mars series, his own Venus series. And yet, his work stands on its own merit really well. But I love old pulp stuff, and in particular Flash Gordon. And you did 12 books for us, I think
I
it was,
think something like that.
yeah,
Yeah, it was a
12,
lot.
12 paperbacks from the 70s that were written. The pseudonym that was used by the publisher back then, Avon Books, was Con Stephenson. But it was the guy who actually was Con Stephenson was a writer in the comic book industry named Ron Goulart, and he had to use a pseudonym because of contractual obligations to, I think, DC and Marvel. So, but those are actually really better than expected, especially the first 6. I thought were really great, and
They were fun, and
they
having
captured the fun of what Flash Gordon was to me as a kid growing up.
When was that a single cast or a Johnny and a cast of
No, that
characters?
was no, that was just Johnny reading the novel. It was novels, and yeah, the multicast, that would have been those books were not written that way. It would have been difficult to do that.
So is your company
Unless
right now
Johnny had
doing?
been our third person narrator, and then as everyone's dialogue came up, but it would just have been so awkward with, and then he said,
yeah,
and
you had to rewrite the whole book to make it
yeah,
work.
so
Yeah.
So what do you see right now as your mix of? Are you doing 60% single narrator doing the whole, and is multicast a big thing now? Is it going to be a big thing? What are you looking at?
we are doing about 99% single cast.
Okay, cool.
We've only done a couple of multicast titles. Both of them were big adventures for us, but not the commercial success we were hoping for. And one of them is absolutely beautiful. We assembled the cast of a stage play version of Frankenstein, and we had the original writer of the stage play, the director, and then the entire cast down at Vanderbilt University in their recording studios in Nashville to record a dramatization, and it's stunning. It's incredible, and um, marketing did not even help that one. That was just it kind of
It's surprising these labors of love that you
yeah.
put so much into that don't seem. I know that my friend Paul Rubin directed us on a production from Dreamscape of the Scottish play with Scott Brick and Kate Mazur and Dion Graham and Simon Vance, a lot of big names, and it's the best. It's the best Macbeth I've ever heard, or it's just brilliant. And I
Mhm.
don't think it made any money. And I'm just thinking, I sometimes the best laid plans, there is no accounting for for taste, I guess.
Right. Well, and it might just be that there's so much material out there. Um, and when you're dealing with something like a Frankenstein, you're going to find a million versions of it on wherever you stream or listen. And so I think that's a big part of the problem is the industry is competing against itself on so many levels.
Yeah.
We also try to explore public domain works, but I mean, my gosh, Virginia Woolf, a couple of her titles became public domain on January 1st this year, and on January 1st this year, several versions of each of her books showed up on Audible,
Yeah.
and they had been anticipated, but we're actually because of my own background in the entertainment industry, I've been using some of my industry connections from years ago. And, right now we're working on a major project through one of our, Oasis Family Media is an umbrella for Oasis Audio, which is our audiobook division. And then we have 2 print companies. We own Sky Turtle Press, which is a like sort of a high concept print publisher that I and my associate publisher Rebecca Reynolds created, and then we bought during COVID a sci-fi and fantasy imprint called Enclave Publishing that does YA, sci-fi, and speculative fiction. But through our Sky Turtle Press and the science fiction group under that, Sky Turtle Nova, we are currently developing a publishing program, a robust publishing program based on the Japanese kids show from my era and Johnny yours, Ultraman. And so we are developing a middle grade series of books right now, but we have the rights to develop middle grade, upper elementary, YA, and adult novels. And we're working directly with Tsuburaya, the Japanese publisher or the Japanese production company who makes Ultraman. And so those are going to be books. And then obviously we're going to have an audiobook component to them because why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
And so, that's exciting for us because I have felt for about the last 20 years that Ultraman never got the kind of exposure in the US that it deserved. And it's Ultraman is sort of like the Grateful Dead of Japan. It has been on TV nonstop since 1966. There have been about, I think, maybe 22 original Ultraman series. And what they'll do is they'll air them for a couple of years. And then while they're airing those, they'll be developing another one and they'll end that series and then come out with an all new one with a new cast, a new Ultra, and
kind of like Doctor Who.
Very much like Doctor Who, and it's brilliant. And when I look at my son who's 35 years old, and when he was 5, Power Rangers burst onto the scene in America. Power Rangers wouldn't exist if it weren't for Ultraman in Japan, because its Power Rangers roots were in Japan.
Yeah.
And so that is a project that we're really excited about. And then, we've been working under Sky Turtle Press. Our big project has been Edmund Spenser's The Fairy Queen, which is a 1590, 3-volume epic poem. We've done a modern version. It's written in modern English, but it's prose, but it's line for line accurate. And, that's going to be 40 hours of audio minimum.
Yeah. Wow.
And, we're currently trying to decide who we want for that. We have a couple of British, I'd almost call them royalty actors, some great voice talent who want to do this.
Yeah.
And if they wanted to do them for free, it would be a much easier decision for us.
Sure. 40 hours is hard to do for free.
Yeah. Well, I can't imagine anyone would want to do 1 hour for free.
Oh,
but
sure. For a good cause. And let me ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
Because I want to go back to your entertainment background. But before I do, you've mentioned a number of times pulp and pulp fiction.
Mm-hmm.
I know that our audience may know something, but most probably won't even understand what you mean. So can you give a brief definition or explanation of pulp fiction?
All right. Well, pulp fiction kind of originated in the late teens in America, the 19 teens, before television, really in the infancy of radio. There were magazines they called pulp magazines, and they were literally dime magazines that were sold at newsstands, but they would have 3 or 4 novels in each book. And so a lot of them weren't the best written. A lot of them were cranked out. There were some writers like, The Shadow and The Spider, about these heroes, or Fu Manchu, the, Asian nemesis,
And Rex Stout with the Nero Wolf was in a lot of those.
Absolutely. And even, characters we grew to know. Well, Tarzan,
yeah.
John Carter of Mars all started in pulps. And
Sherlock Holmes was sort of a British pulp.
Well, Sherlock Holmes actually was published in book form in the UK,
and
but he
and then
definitely
serialized in Australia.
fits the pulp hero for sure.
Yeah.
And
And is there a big market for that? So here's the question. So I'm totally ignorant. Like you guys are talking about, I haven't heard of 80% of these things because I'm ignorant and uneducated. So the audience for this is huge these days, I assume, or just or niched enough that that there's a big enough audience for you, and then you're looking for a bunch of narrators to work with this.
I don't want to say the audience is huge. At the same time, 20 years ago, people were still scoffing at comic books as important literature. And yet, every blockbuster Hollywood movie in the last 40 years has been either based on a comic book or somehow inspired by the comics industry. Um, so I don't want to take away the importance of it. There are authors who were published in pulps like Ray Bradbury, who is a significant author of the 20th century. H.P. Lovecraft. There have been two major cable TV series based on H.P. Lovecraft works in the last 5 years, and then a movie in production right now. So part of this is us educating people who listen to audiobooks about what you should listen to. You know, one of the authors that we have loved, I mean, everyone knows J.R.R. Tolkien, everyone knows C.S. Lewis, but do they know that there was a mentor, not a in-person mentor, but one Scottish writer who influenced both of those writers was George MacDonald. And in America, George MacDonald is primarily known for his fairy tale, The Princess and the Goblin, that's been made into, you know, half a dozen animated little girl after school special movies. But George MacDonald is just an amazing writer. He is what I would say the grandfather of modern fantasy. He has books Lilith, At the Back of the North Wind, Fantasties, that are just, you know, full of, okay, you know how when you've either read or watched A Christmas Carol by Dickens, and you get into the ghosts of the past, present, and yet to come, and that story takes on a fantasy element. Well, George MacDonald is only those fantasy elements, like times a gazillion. And you know, in one of his books, in I believe it's in Fantasties, or maybe it's Lilith, there's a haunted house, and in the haunted house are two skeletons of a dead couple, and they continue to bicker and argue with each other, even in death. And the man who is visiting this house has to experience that, and you know, it's wild. And so MacDonald probably influenced writers like H.P. Lovecraft, you know, who's known among, you know, horror writers, you know, as the Call of Cthulhu, the Shadows over Innsmouth.
You know, there's over 150 audiobooks, George MacDonald's by
Yeah.
George MacDonald on Audible right now.
Mhm. And he's
So, I
brilliant.
mean, it's
And ours have been narrated by our associate publisher, Rebecca Reynolds. And Rebecca is a known authority on George MacDonald, and she actually was just a keynote speaker at a George MacDonald conference.
So I want to ask a
Cool.
question about that then. So if I want to be on your radar as a potential narrator, like Heller is, are you looking for me to be? I assume you'd want me to already be pretty well versed in this whole universe. That if I know nothing about, let's say, Tolkien, I've never heard of Tolkien, or I've never heard of You know, if I say
Mhm.
kind of I'm totally ignorant of this, then I'm not exactly going to be on your prime list, I assume.
As a narrator,
Yeah.
what if you're exceptional? What if you're exceptional and you've never heard of him? Why would I want to, why would I want to not
Well, let me.
have have do a sample? I mean, I'm looking at the comments, and Lisa Barnes just commented that, I took a university honors course on Tolkien, wrote a paper on George MacDonald. Okay, those are neat things to know. Um, we have a robust collection of author biographies, including several on Lewis, one on Tolkien, um, a George MacDonald biography, Dorothy Sayers, the group that was called the Oxford Inklings, the group of writers that powwowed at Oxford, G.K. Chesterton, Owen Barfield. We've got biographies of all these guys, and I want to tackle their fiction. um, I'm excited to think of doing that in the future. But what I would say is, and Johnny knows this. Lisa Smith, who is my producer, my production manager, she's the person to contact. I mean, she's been developing a narrator resource list for herself and sending out surveys to narrators, asking what their interests are, what they would like, what kind of work they're looking for. And, one thing I'd say is, if you get one of those, respond to her, and respond to her in a non-smartassy way, because
Oh God,
she had
count me
a
out.
number of people who were
Whoops.
extremely opinionated about what they would and would not work on. And,
Oh,
and, one of the things,
I will say,
yeah, go on.
yeah, I did. You guys hired me back in, oh gosh, 2015. I don't know, it's my first book. It was like a 15-hour book on George MacDonald that I did, and I
Right.
didn't know who he was when I got the book. I mean, now I do
You
because I
did
spent
his
15 hours on it.
biography. You did his
Yeah, yeah,
biography, and that's a brilliant biography. And
wonderful.
I'm thrilled to have that you did it. Um, but there are so many great authors and this is going back to your original question. Pulp Pulp produced so many novels at a time when a novel was a dime, but you could buy four of them in a magazine form for a dime, and it created a bunch of very, very wealthy writers because they were paid by the word. And so they said there were writers who were at some points of their career writing like 97,000 words a week. And even if you were being paid a penny a word back then, that would have been a decent salary. But there were very popular writers, who made more than that. And
Just from a historical
yeah,
perspective, would you be willing to think that maybe, in the early the days of the American West, when the dime novels about Kit Carson and Billy
yeah,
the Kid and those are kind of the beginning of pulp, I think,
absolutely,
because they were,
absolutely.
yes, and from there it grew. Now the steampunk's all over the place.
Mhm.
And you guys have done a lot of steampunk books too. I find what Oasis does, and this isn't just me glad handing you, but you did some fascinating things in the realm of sci-fi and lit RPG and punk and noir and all that stuff. It's
Mhm.
fascinating to me.
Well,
'Cause-
John, one of the things that I've always been a fan of that myself. And it probably was unwise of the owners of our company to put me in charge, because I tend to lean towards the things that I personally like. However, I came from a career in the film industry where I was always looking at trends and finding what would be successful, or what could be, successful in the future. About 8 years ago, I was going through a used bookstore, and I found an old paperback book of the TV show Dark Shadows from the 60s.
oh yeah, Barnabas Collins.
And I looked into that and found there were 32 paperbacks written in that series. And so I got in touch with the Dan Curtis Productions, who owns the rights to Dark Shadows, and I acquired the rights to those 32 books because I knew that they were still having Dark Shadows conventions every year, and that there was still a huge following. And I hired one of the actresses from the show. I think a woman actor from the show is how I'm supposed to say that now. Sorry. I'm a man. I keep forgetting those things. But Catherine Lee Scott, who narrated all of those for us and just did an amazing job. And those were hugely successful for us at a time when it's like they were forgotten. And, you know, I still believe that Gothic romance, the Gothic romance movement from the 60s that was sort of inspired by Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House and Jane Eyre, Bronte's Jane Eyre and Haunting of Hill House were directly responsible for why Dark Shadows was created. But it also then it shot off into a whole genre of Gothic romance. And, you know, we joke, I'm one of my little side hobbies is I collect original paperback book covers, artwork. And there's a website called like Loads of Women Running Away from Castles. and it's the website is literally cover after cover of the trend of these, like, there'll be a dark house up on a hill with one light in the window, and then there'll be a woman running away. And that literally hundreds of those novels came out over the course of between the 60s and the 80s. And
the niches you guys are involved in are just so fascinating, and I do think there's a huge market for all these things. I mean, it's not like the Ultraman thing. How far is that removed from Japanese anime, which is hugely successful now?
Well, I think Japanese anime would have been responsible for how Ultraman started.
Yeah.
You know, Osamu Tezuka, who created Astro Boy, was considered the Walt Disney of Japan back in the 50s, and created Astro Boy, which then came to America in the early 60s. But Astro Boy was so popular on television that it spawned a live action version of the series. Another animated series that came out of that success was Gigantor, and then Speed Racer.
Speed Racer, I remember the Speed.
All of those came to America, and and those were important anime projects. But Japanese fantasy in particular is so popular right now in America.
Yeah. That
for us, when we decided to do Ultraman, Lisa Baarns, everything about everything. Now she's citing Osamu Tezuka, Kimba the White Lion, which was borrowed by Disney to create The Lion King.
Borrowed, yeah.
And by the way,
and hi, Ann Richardson. It's good to see you too.
So Lisa Baarns is just showing that she knows somebody in her family that knows nothing about any of this stuff, and there's somebody in my family that knows almost everything about it. And you can guess which one. And we have some questions that came up. So people want to know about. So Rebecca was asking, do you want to know the preferences though? So if I'm trying to get on your radar because I like this stuff, do you want to know my preference is that I only want dark comedy? I want, whatever. And like Lisa saying that, hey, she's known about George MacDonald for the last, and by the way, we're both in our 60s. So she was in college when she wrote that. So it's a minute ago, but nonetheless, you would want to know that somebody is interested in this category, I assume.
Absolutely. In fact, and Lisa Smith, her email address, can I give it out, John?
Yeah, you should do, yeah.
Well, it's lsmith@oasisaudio.com. And Lisa is, she's a friend of every narrator that she knows.
Oh,
And I mean, she is good
Did
to her narrators. She treats them well, with so much respect. And you would want to work with her, and you would want to keep her happy with you.
yeah.
We try to always find the right fit for audio. And Lisa will come into my office sometimes and just say, oh, I've got this one project, and the publisher, because we do a lot of licensing, so we license from print publishers. And she'll say, well, they want a specific type of narrator, or there might be an ethnic preference, or an ethnic demand.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, if an author's involved, and say it's an African American author, they might say that they'd like an African American voice
Yeah,
involved. It's like,
they call me.
you know, Lisa has resources for that. I mean, she's got this database now, and
I want to be, I want to make sure I get the details right.
Mhm.
L Smith, did I spell everything right there, just in case?
Al Smith at
Ah,
oasisaudio.com.
okay, I'm gonna get that right. Thank you. That's why I want to get it right.
And Lisa is just a wonderful, wonderful. She's just like salt of the earth, wonderful. She's just great. She's a really warm and just a good human being.
Okay, so now that I got that right, so just verify. Is that correct now?
That is correct.
Okay, it
Yeah,
only took me 3 tries. Okay,
Yeah.
hey,
But it's okay. No, but give narrators who are listening today, if you don't already work with us, or you haven't heard from Lisa, reach out to her.
okay.
And because she has been focused on creating this database of narrators. And
Okay, and obviously now let's go back to one of the questions that came up. Then obviously it would make sense that they say, hey, I have preference for this or that. This is what I specialize in. Do we send her samples? Do we send her flowers, chocolate? What's
well, she has given up chocolate. I don't
okay?
know about flowers, but she definitely would want to know author preferences.
Okay.
Because we don't want to mismatch someone.
Right.
If we have someone who, first of all, if we don't have a situation that arises on a daily basis where we need a Northern Irish accent only. Most of it is we just are looking for a great narrator. We've had only a few where it's so specific that we've got to really dig. And so it's normally about preference. And there are narrators who love to narrate nonfiction. There are narrators who love to do romance. I never would want to pick favorites, but Ann Richardson's watching us today, so Ann, you rock too. We love working
She
with
does.
Ann. Ann has done the voice of God for us before in a women's devotional, and she was brilliant at it. But she's doing some romance stuff for us now, and she's just making it better than the author could have ever made it. And and so preference, I don't want someone to, we're doing a true crime and we hire someone who has no interest in true crime. It's not going to benefit anyone.
Right.
And so
Yeah, I want false crime. I want.
exactly.
Okay. And so so as the century matures here, so as we, do you have an eye on any specific writers coming into the public domain? Something to revive that you're excited about? Or is, or you,
That's an interesting question, because we look at our public domain titles as a way to curate carefully for titles when we have some downtime. We don't necessarily, we're not out there digging for public domain gold,
Okay.
where we would take away from something new. I'm looking for new writers. I'm looking for people like Joe Hill. 10 years ago, Joe Hill. I would love to find writers like that, not only for our audio, but my gosh, for our publishing imprints.
And is print even? I've heard nobody reads print anymore.
Have you heard that? Okay.
That's just not true.
Yeah.
No, what's your perspective on that? What's the mix of it? And as far as you can tell, print ain't going away, or is print on the decline, or print's growing, or tell us what you're seeing.
I do not believe print will ever go away. I love books. I collect books. When I started here, I knew very little about the audiobook industry, but I've been at Oasis now coming on 15 years, 14 years, sorry. And, I had to immerse myself right away into it. But it was also, I came in at a time when, we were doing studies, and finding that, teachers were finally starting to accept that kids listening to audiobooks should be considered that, that was reading. And whereas audiobooks are kept out of classrooms for a long time. And yet, the sound learning program, the study that was done, showed that, kids who listen to audio while they're reading the book had a 78% higher comprehension. And, I think that's legitimate there.
What
I
about the
think
general population? How are they? Are like, if you put out a new title, are you doing simultaneous book and audio? You do audio first, you do print first, you do them both?
the majority of Oasis's books are still licensed from other publishers, and we try to release those simultaneously with the release of the book. That always helps us. When we do our own books in-house, we always release audio simultaneously. It's just logical to do that. I mean, we've had a couple of hiccups where we weren't able to do that. And so, and it's disappointing when we can't, because, we see the release of a new audiobook as important as, the release of a print book. And in some cases, a little more. I mean, not to rest on my laurels, but, in 2018, we released the Mr. Rogers biography, The Good Neighbor, and we had LeVar Burton narrate that for us. And I would venture to say that we may have had more excitement about our audio release than the print book had from Abrams, just because of LeVar Burton, who he was, who he is. But, the fact that personally encouraged to do Reading Rainbow by Mr. Rogers, it was just this logical progression of him moving into using his fame and taking it into an educational arena, and then being able to read the biography of Fred Rogers from a standpoint of knowing him. It was brilliant. And I'll tell you what, I would love that kind of excitement all the time. I would love it if people were as excited about our audiobooks as they were excited about books. If we had, and this will never be Oasis, but, if we had Joe Hill read by Stephen King, his dad, I would imagine that everyone would be very, very excited. Or, I think we'll never be able to touch Neil Gaiman, because I think Audible kind of has something going with him. But, have Neil Gaiman read Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream would be just brilliant. And so, there are, when people fit right, a new energy comes from it. I've actually for years wanted to find the right new Gothic romance novel because I know the narrator I want to use for that. And to where I'm now hunting for writers to create that so that I can publish it myself and hire that narrator. But, I've always looked at audio as another form of entertainment. When I served on the APA board, I felt it was important for us to televise the audio awards because we are a hybrid of publishing and entertainment. And I think it's so important to celebrate great literature narrated by great narrators, great readers. I always want to do that.
Mr. Smith, if only there were more like you in our business. Seriously, it's wonderful to hear you talk with such respect for the industry that we're all in.
Well, I think, John, part of it is I'm a creative. I'm not a business guy.
Yeah.
And I just happen to have some gifts that allowed me to transition into this role. And I have a deep appreciation for literature. I have a deep appreciation for talent. And so
yeah,
I'm always going to be that way. I would be hard pressed to say I'll ever fit in a different environment,
Oh, so. You fit into our environment perfectly. Does that, I can't read the questions. Does that say Sasquatch?
Yeah. Somebody, and I can't even, so he would have to explain that because what's the best underbarrel attachment for the MCW in Call of Duty? And what? I think that's a little.
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, that's a little outside of our wheelhouse. Okay?
Yeah. A cool name, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know either.
The answer is 32.
Right. Yeah. So Lillian's talking about here, hey, she's like the rest of us. You get the right narrator with the right material, and then some gold happens. But what's your definition, though, of it? So I'm just getting started. What should I do to be better at the craft so that you would be interested in working with me?
You should attend Johnny Heller's workshops as often as possible.
Okay.
That's a great
idea. Why though? No, okay, but
honestly, I think, okay, if you were to say, I want to be a painter, I want to be a famous painter, what would you do? You would paint, you would practice, you would paint. Don't wait for someone to hire you to narrate. Start practicing, read your favorite book. When we have new narrators come into our studio, we'll often have them ask, what do you want me to read? Like, why don't you come in with something you'd like to read? Pick 3 pages of a book that you like. And, I learned that one from Deb Dion. Deb and Bob Dion had told me that years ago, that's what they do is you have someone come in and read 3 pages. A few years ago, I saw an interview with a
That's really good. I gotta laugh. Rebecca, that's a brilliant answer. They said, ask us anything. They didn't say they would answer anything. Because we don't know. And that's a really great aside there. One of the things is we have people in our audience that's almost as snarky as we are. But now you guys have some ways to go on that. So back to the subject here. So people come in, they should read. In other words, I should come to you. Here's some things that I feel good about. This shows off what I can do. It shows off that I understand what you do, like what you publish, what you're right. looking for. Is that close?
Yes, that's very close. I mean, I want people to, if someone's reading something that's a toil, that's just horrible for them, and it's excruciating to get through, no one's going to love the end results, and why bother? Someone who comes in excitedly. I mean, not every narrator who loves children's literature is going to get to narrate Dr. Seuss or Shel Silverstein. They're just not going to be able to because it's all done already. And yet, if you love that, practice using those books. I mean, if you want to, first of all, I still believe in the future of children's audio. For so long, children's audio just didn't sell, because of the length of a book. It didn't, people on Audible didn't want to use a credit, but, we've published 170 boxcar children books. We've published Nancy Drew Diaries, Hardy Boys Adventures, Tom Swift. We've done some really fun children's books, and now there's this audio component. It's a little box called Yoto that is marketed to children, and the audio is included in a chip, or the access to the audio is included on a chip on a credit card that they can buy in the store or online. And you plop it into your Yoto unit, and then Wi-Fi picks it up and streams, the book for you. And we have seen our children's audio sales grow, like they explode because of Yoto, because of library streaming. It's not all about a sale of a book. It's with the streaming platforms. We're on Spotify, we're on Audible, but we're also on, Hoopla and on Overdrive and Findaway, the various Libby. We're everywhere with our titles, and that makes Audible accessible, or audio accessible everywhere. Our books are available in audio from Apple, from Google. We're available everywhere. And we found that during COVID, we had two of our greatest years because of our children's titles, because kids were holed up, and their parents were trying to find things for them to do and listen to, in this case. And that helped us tremendously. But it also was something I wanted to do because I love children's literature, and I still want to continue doing children's literature. One of the things I'd love to do is do multicast readings of graphic novels. I'm dying to do that. You couldn't take something like Art Spiegelman's Mouse, and make that into an audio book. First of all, I don't think Art would appreciate it himself. I don't think he would love that. But it was also a very personal story for him, because, it was more or less the story of his family.
So Chris is asking, do you have open auditions for your book? So in other words, if I'm not on Lisa's, her radar already, and you need how does that work for your company?
You email Lisa, you get on her radar. That's the biggest thing, get on her radar. I mean, we've rarely done an open audition as, what would be like an open casting call,
right,
type thing, where we have a new book and we say, okay, we're looking for this. At the same time, it doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing that. Maybe we should be doing that more. But my gosh, get on her list. Just let her know who you are. You don't need to send 100 samples. Send a sample or two, and again, tell her your preferences or things you just don't want to record. Oasis's roots were in Christian and inspirational publishing years and years ago. And we've had narrators who simply say, I have no interest in doing anything religious. I just don't want to do it. We've had a few who are nasty about it, and that doesn't go very far. And to think that that's okay to give your opinions about that, that'd be like going in for a job interview and saying, well, I don't want this job.
Yeah, it's the same thing when Heller keeps
for
telling everybody he hates me. It's like, why would you tell everybody that? And
it's clear, it's obvious, yeah. But it's just the very idea. I understand there are some things people don't want to do, but when you guys were pretty much mostly Christian and inspirational literature.
Yeah.
To even people need to know who they're contacting. They should
Right.
know the kind of books you're putting
Absolutely.
out.
Right.
That's homework. That's just basic homework.
Yeah, I agree. So Sasquatch wants to know what kind of mic you're using, Johnny.
Who, me?
Yeah.
I don't know.
What I
What is
want
it?
to know is, do you guys have like the fat lens on me today? I mean, I need a haircut.
You look fantastic.
No, I don't. I don't like this look.
Oh, it's an AT 4047. I don't know anything about that. I
AT
think someone told me to get.
4047 Sasquatch. Got that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be helpful for you in the future.
Big time.
And I
But,
do a tech show every.
I know no tech stuff at all. So
Yeah,
whatever's
and I
in
do a
here,
tech show
people
every
told me to do.
Tuesday at later in the afternoon. So that's a perfect place for those questions. Although you can ask it here, there's nothing wrong with that.
That's a fair question, at least.
Yep.
So you've got. Let's talk as we get later on. Tell us about this great book you've got, the Nemo book. Let's talk about that a little bit.
My book?
Yes.
Oh, shucks.
Yes.
Sorry to.
Time to plug stuff. Yes.
My new book. It'll be out in the fall. I'm trying to.
There it is. That's perfect.
Yeah, we can
right
see
there,
it. It's
perfect.
beautiful. Just beautiful.
Yeah.
This is a book written by a friend of mine in France named Benoit Peters, and illustrated by his writing creative partner, Francois Scoyton. I have translated 7 of these graphic novels into English. In 2022, I won the Will Eisner Comic Industry Award for one of the translations at San Diego Comic-Con. But this is a culmination of a 40-year series of books. And it's Captain Nemo, who, if you could see my car, my license plate is Cap Nemo. And I'm a huge Jules Verne fan. And this is a love letter to Jules Verne by these 2 creatives. And so it'll be available in the fall. I'm excited about it. It's, some people already have it because I did it as a Kickstarter. This was not done through Oasis. This was done by myself. And
you have it in audio already?
It is not an audio yet. I would love to do an audio book. It's currently in Paris right now. They have created a stage performance of the material, and so I'm dying to get a video of that so that
Let's just go there and investigate it. Come on.
Should we hop a plane now?
Yes.
Go see the parasites?
Yeah, or we go. Hey, you remember in Chicago that the sub sandwich place, Nemo's? Remember Nemo's? Oh, it was a great sub sandwich place in Rogers Park, I think.
Oh, sub sandwich. I was thinking of nightclubs, and I was thinking of Neo's.
Is that still there?
I don't know if Nemo's is. Neo's is gone, the club, but
when you said Captain Nemo, and I thought, wait a minute, I used to go to Nemo's for
no,
sandwiches.
I remember that now.
Yeah.
In the city, but yeah, I don't know that it's still there. But Neo, the nightclub, is gone.
Everything changes.
But,
well, Paris is still there. Let's go there.
It is there,
and
it would be a lot of fun to go there.
It'd be a write-off to go see the Nemo show.
Well, and this book is actually done in conjunction with the release of or the unveiling in February 8th is Jules Verne's birthday. They're installing a very large monument in the town square of Amiens, France, where Jules Verne lived. And it was designed by Francois Scoyton, the artist of this book. And it's this giant squid wrestling the Nautilus. And it's this massive installation. And so this book was done in part to celebrate that.
And I'm so happy for you. I truly am. I think it's wonderful.
And I assume you have audio rights to that as well?
You assume correctly. you assume.
And is that a project that you think might happen in the next year or two?
It is a project. Well, the first book I did in the series was called The Leaning Girl. And it was, to this date, it's my single favorite project I've ever worked on, and the thing I'm most proud of. And it's how I got involved in this series. And I have every intention of creating a multicast recording of The Leaning Girl, and then This one would only need 2 actors because it's between Jules Verne and Captain Nemo, the 2 characters in this book. And I would like to do that this year. That would be something I'd like very much to do.
That's
So,
great.
Awesome.
That is so great.
Awesome.
but,
Awesome. Before we close up, because I know we're
mhm.
getting to the end here and I know you're short on time, anything else that you want to tell us about, plug, cool things you have coming up? What's something on your radar that we didn't think to ask you about?
I think you've asked me everything I can think of. My nervous, I'm very shy. I'm very
Yes.
introverted.
Me
And so
too.
this has been very hard for me. But knowing Anne's been here all along has been comforting for me. She is truly the best.
Anne,
No,
I think just came for you. I don't know if Anne is lovely. She's one of my faves.
yeah, she's
She's
something else.
remarkable.
Yeah. No, you know what? First of all, what I'd like to say to everyone, I mean, it's not even just me. I mean, it's on behalf of Lisa Smith here as well. And no, we are not married. For years, we had people come up to us at APAC and other events saying, "Oh, I just met your better half." It's like, my wife's here. It's like, oh no. And I had to behave, no, Lisa and I have been friends because I'm actually a friend of her older brothers. I've been a friend of his since I was 18 years old. And Lisa recommended me for this job. Lisa already worked here and she recommended me for this job. And I think has regretted it ever since. Because she will tell people, I didn't know he was going to become my boss. I'm like, well, it happens. But we love doing high quality audio here. We're never going to be big like Recorded Books. We're never going to be as diversified as, say, Blackstone has become in the last few years. We're still a small company, but we're a very creative, small company. And, our owners have always been very hesitant when SAG has come a call and saying, you should become a union shop. And like, we're not going to do it. However, when SAG came to us and said, will you support us on AI regulations? And we said 100%. And our owners bought into, it wasn't even a matter of me having to say, this is why we need to do this. Our owners were just right there saying, we never will do AI voices. We want to be known as a quality production house, a quality publisher and distributor. We do this for the art of it as much as for the profit of it. So I think narrators who want to give us a try, I think you'll like us. So
Great.
What's not to like?
Yeah.
Well, Steve, thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you for
guys.
taking time out and being with. I really appreciate it. It's a favor to me, and I can't thank you enough. So I appreciate it, and I wish you all the success in the world and all your projects.
And
Thank you, guys, both of you. Thank you for having me, and everyone who was here today. And Colette, thank you for your compliments, for overcoming my shyness.
You do seem kind of shy. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just what I am. I'm all about it. So anyway, yeah, just think of us. Your narrators. Think of us. We're a great place to do work with. And
I concur.
All right.
Awesome.
Johnny, be well, everyone.
All right. Take care, Steve. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
And
thanks a lot.
John and I'll hang out one
anything
second
that you need
say our
to
goodbyes to
tell
the
us
audience.
about upcoming?
What's that?
Do you have anything upcoming that we should talk about?
I think Paul Rubin and I may be doing a New York City audiobook workshop. I put it online. I forgot. August 24th, we're looking at.
Awesome.
And then there is the New England Narrator Retreat that you can still get some space at. Any questions, please ask me, DM me. If you need tech stuff, Don's got his tech thing coming up later today. I'll try for you. 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific. Every week we do basically an Ask Me Anything tech related. So it's the same format, but you're just stuck with me. Johnny won't. Yeah. Johnny knows too much about this stuff, so he gets bored. So he won't attend, but anyway, so that's coming up later today. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to also, when the show's over, putting comments in on the show, and you can post a link to other groups that make sense. Is insanely helpful. You can't believe how helpful it is if you throw a comment in, you subscribe, you like this stuff. It's super helpful, and we appreciate you being here every week. We'll be back next week. I'm drawing a blank on the guest for next week, but we'll put out some publicity. Do you remember, Johnny?
No, I'd have to look it up.
Okay.
I think it may be Daniela Acitelli, but I can't remember.
Oh, I hope it's her. She's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
So if she's not next week, all right, we'll put that down.
Yeah.
But she's awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll have her on. So you guys have a fantastic week. We'll see you next week. Have
Bye,
a great
everybody.
one. See you in the
Bye-bye.
letters.
Bye, Don.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.